so quiet in here today? What's happening? We might also have, surprise, surprise, some more technical difficulties. Because, I think my battery's dying or something like that from my... Which sucks. Oh, we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen with that. Oh, and even more troubles. My chat is not... That's great. New stream music. Hello, Connor. Hello, Falco. Hello, Sergio. New stream music? No, this is my old school stream music, actually. So this is from the medieval streams that I was doing. It's all like League of Legends music from a while back. For the old school people, they will recognize it. God, how long is it ago since I did those like medieval streams and I was working? It was like ages now. Let's switch on the proper lights. Before my time. I don't even remember when that was, honestly. Let's see. Let's switch things up, and we're gonna see. We're gonna see how long my camera will last. It is plugged in. No idea what's happening. It is plugged in. It's always plugged in, and it still says like, "Hey, battery's dead. Recharge me." Sign. Let's make the most of it while we're here. Let's do it. A little bit. Go. Yeah, how's everyone doing? Let's actually have a quick look at when my last medieval stream was. I'm curious now. Doo-doo. So, playlists. Oh my god. A year ago? What? No way. Oh, end of the year 2023. That was the last stream that I did. Oh my god. Any more of this coming? Oh. I would honestly love to. Would honestly love to go back to like streaming like that. Who knows? Maybe in the future. Would be cool. Stuff here. Yeah, it would be cool. It would be cool to go back to that. But yeah, just a quick introduction here. So welcome again to my weekly slot where I basically go through like our community and I give feedback. So usually it takes like an hour. Well, an hour. That's a lie. 2 to 3 hours, let's say. Connor is saying you were working on it again. Oh, no. I want to. I really do. But I just don't have time. In between like all the stuff happening, I need to prioritize beyond extent. Oh. There's so much cool stuff I want to do, so much cool stuff that I want to try, but I just can't do it. Not yet. We have other priorities that I need to focus on. I think that's always a struggle. You know, it's like, oh, I want to do like creative shit. I want to do my own stuff, and it's like, can't, because I need to do. Which I also do like, by the way. Hello, Charlie. Welcome back. Getting things organized. Oh. There we go. How's it going on? Yeah, it's going good. It's going good. We had a really cool workshop yesterday with Blake Blyken. A workshop that I really enjoyed. I feel after that workshop, even though like the workshop was awesome, I had a really good time. People had some really good feedback for it as well. People were really happy. There was a part of me, I just wanted to bring the podcast back. because Blake has so much experience. And it was an absolute pleasure talking to Blake. it was just amazing to be around someone with like his experience. Just to give you some context, he joined the industry in '87 as a games artist. And he has been working for multiple companies, doing freelance stuff. He's been an art director. He's been all over the place. So he's been working in the games industry before I was even born, which is freaking crazy to think about. And I kind of had this like, man, I wanna talk to you about like all the cycles of game dev, because I feel like we're in a new cycle, and someone with his experience could actually shine a light on what is currently happening, or like how would it even correlate with um earlier like iterations of the sleeper stakes on Discord. Yeah, I made the connection. I think I make the connection between people that I see joining. It's just keeping that connection in my head for long enough where it's memorable. That's going to be the issue. So I might need the occasional reminder. um, but you're asking, is there a VOD that I can watch for the workshop? I couldn't make it. So usually the way that it works, and it's been pretty shoddy, as you all know. I've not been a stranger to like, well, I've not hidden this away. So what we usually do is we record it, we request a recording from the people that host the workshop, and then we send them off to editing. And then once they're edited, then we will upload that that recording to your dashboard, so on Beyond Extent. And we will leave it there for like 1 month, 2 months. That is something that we might gonna change in the future, but like at least a decent amount of time before it gets publicly accessed. So as soon as we get it back from editing, that's when I'll upload it, make sure that everything is correct, and then we'll get things on there. So yeah. So the current 2 workshops, I think, if I remember correctly, it's the one from Zera Khan and the one from Andrew Little are currently being edited, which I actually need to give feedback on after the stream. And then after that, we have Tabea Thoron's workshop that needs to be edited, and then Blike's workshop. So there's a little bit of a backlog, but we're working through it. Get it to you as soon as possible. It was really cool indeed. I personally felt very inspired and motivated after work. Yeah, I felt... Me too. Like, there's something so energizing talking to people generally in this industry, because they all have like their own separate views. Everyone kind of has their own things, and it's really... I do like that about the games industry, where we know that it's tough, and it's easy to kind of get like caught up in like the day-to-day stuff. But sometimes when you talk to other people and they're going through their own things, like it puts perspective on stuff, which is really cool. Blazes blockout is looking sick for Sergio. Yeah, we're gonna have a look at that in just a minute. Cool. Yeah. I kind of skipped like the middle of my introduction, but for people that are new here, we're gonna dive into some feedback in just a minute from our lovely community. I think we have like 11 people today, so it should be relatively chill session. But if you have any other questions about how it is in game dev, any related news stories that you've seen, or just being an environment artist yourself, feel free to ask me any questions about that. So Falco is setting a good example here. Thank you so much, Falco. I have a question. How do you set the texel density for a game where the player can swap between first and third person? So I think in that case, it should be relatively simple. You build your texel density for first person, and then you just have to be a bit more specific with how you set up your LOD change. Like LODs is more about geometry, right? And then also your mip maps, like where things get cold. Because I mean, you usually work towards the highest spec, right? That is the thing that we do in the industry, where if we're going to do a cinematic for something, right? Let's say we have a cinematic and we need higher quality assets specifically for that cinematic. We build them for that cinematic, and then everything we can distill from those assets. So in this case, it would be the same thing where you build everything towards like first person quality first, and then um, subtract or like extract the data that you need and like the optimization back to third person. Obviously, depending on the art style, it can also work the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but it can also just be like, hey, look, it's going to be a third person game that's going to have like first person cinematics. We don't care about that like relatively small loss that we get, or if stuff looks a little bit blurry, that's totally fine. That can also be the case, right? Where you don't want to build like higher quality assets for the purpose of switching to a first person game like every now and again, right? So there's some context needed there. Depends on how important it is, how frequently it can happen, all that kind of. The way that Blank was explaining how to handle ZBrush in Designer was very relaxing, not overcomplicating anything. Yeah, and I think we've gotten a really, really unique view on how someone with a lot of experience then picks up like a new tool, which is something that you will rarely see, right? Because he has a lot of experience. He has made a lot of assets, but he's very, especially he was very inexperienced when it came to Designer specifically, which was really cool to see, and then really brushed up on his knowledge when it comes to. So I feel honestly that's like a view that you don't really get, you know? Like someone who has almost 40 years of experience. Right? 40 years of experience is already unheard of. And then also still pivoting into like new programs. It's just great to think about. And I think that's a good showcase of like at a certain point, and I kind of feel the same thing as well. I've experimented with so many programs, done so many different workflows already, and I don't have like nearly enough, like nearly as much like experience for as Blake did. But I kind of already feel that I'm getting in that position where it doesn't matter what you throw at me, you know? It doesn't matter what you throw at me. Even if I don't know the program, I can make it work. The audio cutting out. Oh shit. What is happening with the audio? Is it my mic or be curious? I've not done any adjustments though. That would be weird. Like a word or two just drops? Huh. Weird. It's all coming through perfectly fine on my end, which is weird. Interesting. Keep me informed if it keeps happening. Funky shenanigans going on. Hello, VRP. How you doing? Good to see you back. Glad to have you. Charlie Chrome is asking, do you think just sculpting in Blender will affect my job prospects at all? I can't afford ZBrush right now. If you can't afford it, then it doesn't matter, right? Like you can literally achieve anything that you want to sculpt in Blender. Because that was like the conversation that we had last time, right? Where I was kind of leaning the opposite way, but after I went away from that conversation and I started thinking about it, yeah, the industry is primarily still in ZBrush, right? There's no denying that. But again, it is just there's so many tools and workflows that are going to be relatively similar, even though the buttons are going to be in different sections, or you have to interact with the tools in slightly different ways. It's going to be the same thing, you know? So especially when you can't afford ZBrush, you know, Blender is a free option. Other options out there as well. You've gotta do what you gotta do, you know. Crippy is chilling. Got done playing some Halo Reach. The campaign's super fun. Hell yeah. Hello Lily, good to see you. Happy to have you back. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So I kind of flipped back because there's been so many. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like the jobs that I applied to in the beginning, I started out. I only knew 3ds Max, and then I switched to Maya for my first job, and then I switched back to Max for my second job, and then I switched to Blender for my third job. You know, not for the job specifically, but I was just, I don't know, I wanted to do Blender, and now I use like a mixture of Max and Blender. So same thing, right? If we strip out like, oh, hard surface modeling, and we just talk about like sculpting, we can interchange like sculpting in Blender, which sculpting is different tool, works slightly different, but it has the same outcome. How's your week been? It's been good. It's been busy. Um Especially yeah, it is a I've so it's been a while since I've played Sea of Thieves because I don't have the reasons to. But yeah, I've heard it's a good game, you know? Especially when you kind of have to, huh? Uh, how's your week been? Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Been I don't know. It's been a weird one. I'm How would I even say it? Like I kind of want to try and stay on top of things, but it feels like there's so much like little stuff that I have to do now that I'm just like getting distracted and doing this and doing that. Oh, this has a time, but it's all just like small stuff, you know. So for example, I'll give you an example. I literally today I sent off a batch of business cards. So I designed like a couple of nice looking Beyond Extend business cards because for the meetup that we're gonna organize in a couple of weeks, I wanted to have like cards that people can just pick up and they have like a reminder of Beyond Extend. And it's super simple. It's just a logo in front of it. And then we have like a QR code in the back of it. Actually, let me show you all. Get a little bit of a tease. So let's see. Then I kind of was thinking about doing something for myself as well, but ended up not doing it because I was like, I honestly still have all my first business cards that I've ever printed. I still have a couple of them left, but I can't remember where they are. But for any other conference that I go to connect with myself, right? Like if I'm trying to network with people, I just give them LinkedIn now because LinkedIn has this cool feature where you go to the search bar, you tap it, and then it shows like a little QR preview, and it basically gives you like your own business card. So let me see if I can explain this. Oh, just gonna be completely fucked, isn't it? Nah, my app is completely screwed. Oh well. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I got my first business cards, and I still have a lot of them. So I was like, I'm not gonna make personal business cards. However, I did make an assortment of business cards for Beyond Extend, which is super cool. I'm pretty proud of them. You know, I basically treat any opportunity that I get to show off like the work that we do. So let me show you. Switch on over. Here we go. So we've got like multiple different fronts. And they're gonna be printed on like rounded like business cards, so it's gonna be like nice and rounded. And I just had an assortment like all the team challenges, or like a sample of like the team challenges because they have like nice visuals. And then that's gonna be the front of it, and then it's literally gonna be the back is gonna be become a member, follow us on socials. Clean, super simple, and I think that's gonna be nice. And then we're gonna have like a random collection of them at the event. I think that would be like pretty cool. When is the event happening? So the event unfortunately is already sold out. I mean, here's the thing. We can still add people to the event, especially if they're from Beyond Extent. We can make exceptions, but we're pretty lucky that the event itself is sold out already. So it's called the Games Artist Meetup. We have like a little website as well. It is gonna be let's see. I need to switch proper screen for this. So let's do this. There we go. Right. So it's going to be happening on the 17th of August, which actually is not even on this page now that I think of it. Oh well. It's going to be the 17th of August. We're going to be meeting up in Cologne near Gamescom. So we have our little place that we're going to be hosting it at, which is awesome. And then, yeah, we're going to have a nice gathering. I think we have, well, I know that we have 70 people currently, and that was like the maximum cap of the event. So pretty happy that it's already sold out, and blessed to have ourselves as a sponsor, and then also Fictional Games, Side Effects, and Nvidia is going to be sponsoring us as well. So Nvidia Studio specifically. So yeah, it's awesome. I have wonderful co-hosts as well. So Jasmine is going to be there. Leah is going to be there. It's going to be lovely to meet up with them too. And yeah, I'm honestly really excited to just meet up with a bunch of people. And yeah, I'm honestly really looking forward to it. We're gonna have food and drinks taken care of thanks to our sponsors. So massive shout out to themselves. And then as Beyond Extend, I want to highlight that just again, thank you all so much for allowing me to be in this position where I can also, through Beyond Extend, sponsor people to come into the event, because we're basically sponsoring 20 people extra that can come to the event, and then also can have like free drinks and all that kind of stuff, and have their own networking event too. That is awesome. Thank you so much for doing that, because that is all because community support. So thank you all so much. Let's switch it back for just a moment. Sounds great. I hope it goes well. I think so. I think everything is gonna go fine. You know, you never know. But no, I think we've taken care of all of it already. We just need to get like a couple more things printed, because we want to have like a couple of stickers and a couple of banners and all that kind of stuff. But we're gonna take care of that this week, and should be it. Yeah. There's gonna be like a couple of people from BE that are gonna be there too, so I'm excited to see who's gonna come. And then depending on how well it does, or how fluent it goes, and how interested my co-hosts are, we can potentially think about doing this on the regular. You know? BE memorabilia, let's go. Yeah, I have. So there's gonna be BE stickers. We're gonna have like the BE business cards, which are gonna be nice as well. And then, oh, what else? Didn't really do anything else. Wish I could make it. Have a pint for me. Yeah. And who knows? Maybe, I think, if we were to do this, doing something in the UK somewhere would probably be a good move. But who knows? Who knows if that's gonna happen, when that's gonna happen? But it's definitely, I definitely want to pitch that to them. Well, if this event. Let's see. For people that are jumping in, first of all, welcome. Feel free to ask me any questions of working in the games industry. I've been in the games industry for like 10 years. Well, we're getting some experience under our belt, you know. Definitely join if there's a London meetup. Yeah, so BE did like this was not a game artist meetup, but this was a BE meetup. We did one 2 years ago at EGX. And then we were so disappointed with EGX that we were like, okay, well, this is not going to turn into like a yearly thing then. Okay. It was yeah, pretty disappointing to say the least. But hey, there's other locations, so who knows? Who knows what we're gonna do? There was another question in the chat. So what's the meaning of the logo? It is secret. Secret logo. It is a very abstract interpretation of the artistic journey. That's what we'll go with. Yeah, like EGX has gone downhill. I think they also merged with like Comic-Con now as well. I think, at least. Last time we went, I had a lot of fun, and I was like, okay, if we can organize something around this event, then we can, that would be cool, right? So we did, and yeah, me not realizing that EGX has gone downhill, yeah. Me then feeling responsible for like taking 20 people there. Yet. Crafta, welcome. And thank you so much for asking a question. So the Crafta is asking a question. What do you think about leaving a stable but boring job that pays well for either a lower level position, less pay, but at a more exciting project? Oh, man. I need to have some more context there, because especially if we're talking games, right? I feel that the timeline of the project has a lot to do with it as well. And the type of contract that you're doing it for has a lot of things to do with it as well. So for example, if you're in the current state of the industry, if you think about leaving your stable job, but it's boring, for a lower level position that pays less on a more exciting project, but is working on a contract, especially the last thing, that is something to really, really think about. Because let's say that contract is like 6 months, a year. I feel like the industry currently is so risky that it might be time to like lay low. And then, I mean, the best way to say this is from like a very general level is, if you really want to take that risk, use that boring job that pays well to build yourself an emergency fund, or like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Build that up for yourself so that you can set aside 6 to 12 months. That would be like the absolute ideal position to be in, because then you can take a risk and be safe for like 6 to 12 months, right? I know that that's like an ideal position, but if you're looking at the current industry, I think that is kind of what's needed to be sure that you're not just like stepping off a cliff and like not being able to like go back, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of thinking there. I mean, I know. I mean, it's but usually what happens when I say that though is that it goes even bring this up. Like, that logic goes against what your heart wants to do, right? Because if we're talking about an artistic job, a lot of the satisfaction that we get is by contributing to like a project that you're really excited about, right? Like, we always want to work on like the cool stuff. And if you just work on a dead-end project, or you work on a project that you feel like, oh, this is going to get canceled, which happened to me, you can kind of get a sense of that. If that is the thing you're working on, makes it a little bit more tricky. That's why I'm saying, if you have like a financial backup, you know, or if you have not necessarily a financial backup, but if you have a safety net that you can rely on, that makes this like 1,000 times easier, right? That safety net can be your own money, your parents that you can move back into, whatever that may be. I hope that was helpful, Crafter, because it's not an easy one. Industry is super scary right now. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the pivot, and it sucks to be a junior currently, but I also feel that it's healthy for the industry to go through the stages that we're going to now. And that sounds weird to say, but my hope is that we infuse a bit more creativity back into the process. because it was all about the money, right? Like games, like the reasons why we have these big companies is because we want to make bigger and bigger and bigger stuff. And most of that got driven by business people, right? Where now, if the business doesn't make sense, then why would they still be in it? You know, that was the whole point for them. And I hope there's a little bit of balancing that happens between the people that are in it for the money and the creative people. That they find like more common ground again. Because I feel like the scale's out of balance. But, it's good to hear. I'm just looking to progress my career and I'm not seeing that at my current place. I know it's pretty risky time right now. Layoffs. Yeah. I mean, look, but even within all the layoffs, there's still opportunity, right? So yeah, try to give yourself like a little bit of a safety net and then still take those risks. I'll tell you now, like some of the moves that I made, like I'm being super logical and super like, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this. But if you look at like the stuff that I did, like some of that also didn't make sense, you know? So my first job that I had, I was living in the UK, was working for Frontier Developments. I was kind of feeling the same thing, right? Like I wanted to see more progress in my career. And there was also like a bunch of stuff going on, like with our flat and all that kind of stuff. There was like a bunch of bullshit. Um, so we got kicked out of our flat. Not like, I mean, we got handed a notice to move out of our flat. So I said, like, hey, look, instead of looking at this as like a negative thing, what if we just take this as like a sign that we just need to go somewhere else, right? And we'll take the next step and we'll make it a big adventure and all that kind of stuff. Which basically meant that I had 1 month to look for a new job. So I frantically started looking around. And I think, oh, what was the timing again? So there were a couple of crazy instances where I was in between two studios. I wanted to work for one of them. I didn't really want it to work for the other one. And what happened then is I didn't get an offer from the one that I wanted to work at yet. So I was delaying the other one just so that I could have like a safety net, even like let's say everything just blows up in my face, that I still have that. And then at the last minute, what they did is they said like, hey, look, we've waited for a reply for like a week or two or something like that. We're gonna need a reply from you like tomorrow or the day after. It just happened to be that I had an interview with the other studio the next day. So I came in there, the interview went really well. And I ended the interview by saying, hey, I want an answer by tomorrow. In hindsight, that is a really ridiculous move to do by just adding so much pressure onto like a company like that. I did get an offer. But also like if that didn't come through, like I had nothing. Right? Because I wasn't really gonna accept the other one. So yeah, it kind of worked out, but also that makes no sense, you know? So I'm talking to you like logically, but sometimes just the heart takes over and it's just like, no, I want to do this. I'm gonna go really ambitious, balls to the walls, you know, like I'm just gonna go for it. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes it's you have to decide for yourself, right? What you want to trust in. Yeah, you're screwed if that didn't work out. Yep. And I still remember. So I still remember the place where I was at actually. It was because so the second place was Ubisoft Berlin, right? So they flew me over. I extended my stay there, so I had like 2 days in Berlin. One for the interview. It was like a full day of interviews, and the second day to explore the city a little bit and wait for their reply. I still remember that I was sitting on a bench and the other company set a deadline on me of like, hey, I want an answer by 12. And I was still waiting on Ubisoft to potentially give me an offer. And I remember sitting on that bench and sending them like a pre-typed email of, hey, I'm not gonna take the job. Thank you for bearing with me, blah 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 blah. and I sent that at like 11:59. And I remember calling my girlfriend, I think, and I'm like, "Oh, I just denied the other company. I think we might be screwed here." Then I think 5 minutes later, I got the offer from Ubisoft Berlin. Story isn't done yet though, because when I got that offer, it gave me a junior offer, and I was like, "There's no way that I'm going to take a junior." So I went back to them and said, like, "Hey, look, I don't want to be a junior. I want to be an intermediate." So then they have to go back at it again, right? So, oh, so many risks taken there. But I can remember it vividly. Sitting there on that bench and just waiting for the reply and then being like, oh my God, I'm so screwed. And then 10 minutes later, getting a reply from them, then also denying that and then going back and forth. Oh my God. Yeah, worked out in the end. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there as like a contrast between, hey, here's the logical option and here's what I've done, which is like totally not logical. I feel like, yeah. What would have been your fallback if neither worked? I moved back in with my parents. So me and my girlfriend would have gone back to my parents, taken up my old room, and sort of made that work for a while. That was literally the only fallback that we had. Like, didn't really have like any financial saved up. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 months, but that's not gonna get you anywhere. So, yeah, that would have been the option. Um, yeah, but here's the thing, though, right? Like, I think there are people, and you kind of have to. There's only one way to figure that out. Is it if you are this person? But there are people that if you back them into a corner, they will start fighting, right? Because they don't want to be in that corner. So they will do anything to get out of that corner. And I think in that case, I was like, hey, look, we made this deal. Now I need to get after it. No, there was only one choice for me. Like, I wasn't even thinking about going back to my parents as a fallback. I was like, no, it's not going to even happen. I'm going to go after it. Yeah. Glad it worked out, though. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Yeah, I think so, too. And it's also like you get to know who you are in those moments, I feel. Where sometimes a good timeline is the only thing you need to get stuff done, But yeah. It was crazy. I was definitely after that moment, I definitely took like a week where I was like, "Oh my God, I'm never doing that again." But hey, I I think I will do it again. There will probably be a time where I'm just gonna be like, so done. Let me get out of here. Come on. Cool. Let's have a look at a last question, and then we'll dive into some feedback as well. So VRP is asking, got a question. As an environment artist, do you think it's more important to specialize in either hard surface, organic, or do you think it's better to be more well-rounded and do both? Um, I've never specialized in either or necessarily. Um, what makes the most sense as an environment artist is organic, because it's way more likely that you're gonna do organic stuff when you're doing environments than it is hard surface stuff. At least in my case. But both can have a goal, right? Like if you're working on something as like, let's say Halo, right? Like if you work on that and you have a specialization in hard surface, then they're not going to put you on the open world where you get to like place trees and all that kind of stuff, right? It's more likely that you're going to end up working on a thing that you're actually good at. So to a certain degree, it doesn't matter what you want to specialize it in, because that is a thing that you're going to get hired for. That's why I'm always saying, yeah, exactly, Veer. It's exactly that. It's you gotta focus on the thing that you love to do, because if you do that and you feel it in your element, that's also what they're gonna hire you for. So that is 100% what you need to focus on. Do the thing that makes you passionate about work. Do that at a high level, then you're gonna find jobs. Obviously, simplification, but I do believe in that to like a large degree. This is a bit adjacent to game dev and more just career advice in general. But anyone get any advice on what to do? While they search for game jobs? Seems like the only alternative is hospitality or retail. Oh, okay. So like you're not really getting any success in games, you mean? Yeah, I mean honestly anything. If this is your first job and you're trying to get in as your first job in games, right? And if that doesn't work out, you just gotta do anything that works to put food on the table, right? For example, I mean, I've worked in games for 10 years now, but before that, when I was a student, I worked at Pizza Hut, I worked at multiple retail places, I worked at a Chinese restaurant for 4 years over the weekend, I worked in a chemical company. I was just working all over the fucking place, you know? Because at a certain point, you gotta be like, hey, look, this game thing would be nice, but if I don't do this thing to get food on the table, then I'm screwed, right? And then you can kind of pull the levers to what you need for your situation to do whatever you need to do, right? So for some people, if they're working from home and well, if they're still living at home and their parents just demand like a little bit of like cost of living money, then you can probably get away with like a part-time job, right? If you've if you have like your own family and all that kind of stuff, yeah, you need to do a full-time job, you know? Like there's no way around that. You need to put food on the table for yourself and the family, right? And yeah, that's gonna change your timeline, but that doesn't matter that you can't make it in. For example, um yeah, there's so many people that I know that are like they're older than me, they have more responsibility than me, they have less time than me by a mile, and they also made it in, you know? Like people with multiple kids with like all that kind of stuff. They've all made a transition from like, you know, manual labor to like working in games or from like oh, anything. You can make it work. Just you gotta sometimes you have to be patient, you have to be honest, and you have to just keep it a grind, you know? Every day. With it a little bit of time. Wherever you can. If you can model accurately, you can apply for CAD positions. Certification is easy enough. Yeah, that's the thing that I don't really have like any clue about, to be honest. Right? It's like, what are the fields that are adjacent to like games? Because there's so much stuff out there now, right? Even if you're thinking about movies, a lot of that stuff is done in Unreal now, because they have they call they have like the LED screens, right? And you just have like your environment in Unreal, like mapped to your camera. That could also be a thing as an environment artist. Doesn't have to be games. Architectural visualization, medical applications. I know a bunch of people that I went to school with who are now in like the medical field, just doing like 3D visualization for medical purposes. There's so many applications now. Film is adapting it. Oh yeah, virtual production. There we go. Thanks, Raj. So film is adapting it quite a bit and hiring Unreal artists for it. A couple of people who did games before, and yeah, some of their companies pivoted from like games to doing like virtual production because they saw that as like an upcoming thing. And they love it. Like there's a lot more pressure when you're working on an actual film set, right? Because every minute on the film set, there's so many people on there that there's a lot of pressure on you. But be a cool thing. General 3D artists for products, etc. Yeah. I mean, there's so many options there, right? So here's the thing. It depends. We kind of talked about it before, right? When I was talking about like my career progression and like the way that I moved between companies. Sometimes you just have to be what is the best way of saying this? You just have to be feral. You just have to be a freaking animal and just do whatever you need to do to get a job. It's like because what I see what I see a lot of people do now is because job hunting or job applications are made so easy for you, right? Just go on LinkedIn, you see a job, it's filled out for you already. You just do that, cool. But that is what everyone else is doing. So you gotta think outside the box. You gotta try other things that other people aren't doing to stand out. Because in general, if it's easier to do, then a lot more people are doing it. Yeah. Yeah, persistency and consistency, like those two are like key. And those recruiters are fruit basket people. I mean, honestly, give it a try, you know? Like if you can find, like, if let's say your mom and dad, they have like they run like a farmer's market or something like that, you know, and you can get like really cheap fruit baskets. Who knows? Like, fucking try it. Could be fun. Based on Tim's advice, I bit the interviewer. Gotta be feral. Yeah, I think there is something to that, like fucking around and find out. There's so many things that I've experienced, and I've said this before, right? So I'm not gonna go on like a whole tangent, but like on the blog that I wrote back in the day, like I would also reach out to the artists that I was featuring on that blog, and this beautiful thing would happen where I would tell them that I like their work, blah, 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 blah. And they would be like, oh, some of them would be genuinely interested in what I was trying to do. And I would have a talk with them. They would introduce me to other people. And I've met so many interesting people through that. And I had so many interesting situations because I was just talking to people, right? Like open and honestly talking to people. Yeah. But there's also, what is it? Like 90% of them would just not reply, I think. Or like reply with such a delay that it's like totally irrelevant at that point. And that's something you have to take, right? You just have to take those chances. And a lot of patience, like Toa is saying. Yep. From what I've heard, connections and who you know is extremely important right now. I think it's always been. So for example, when we were recruiting environment artists at USO Berlin, we didn't have an open application. What we did is we would literally say, hey, do you know someone who would be good for this kind of stuff? And we would ask that internally, and then people would be like, oh yeah, here you go, here's a couple of people that I know. And then we would gather those people up, look at the most interesting ones and who was available, and then we would interview them. Not that that always happened, but that happened quite frequently. What percentage of game jobs do you think are unlisted like that? I don't think a lot of them are that anymore. Because there are concerns with that as well, right? Obviously, you're going to be biased. There's, what's it called, like nepotism that can creep in as well. You got to be careful with those practices too. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big percentage, but I would say, the way that it now works, right, is that you have an open position, or you know that there's going to be like an open position that's going to open soon. And internally, you usually get a link for recommendations, right? And then you can send that recommended link to like a person you like, and then they still go through the whole process. And then you usually get like a little bit of cutback from that. That is how it's working now, say. But let's say, yeah, 5 to 10% probably unlisted like that, where they just need someone. They're not gonna go through the whole process. They just want someone really quick. What movie franchise do you think deserves a new video game? Honestly, I'm the wrong person to ask because I barely watch any movies. I barely watch anything. You gotta go with my favorite though. Come on, you gotta go for Pacific Rim. You know, give me a video game from that. But I feel like if we're gonna have a video game from that, we're gonna go back to like the age of games that I grew up with. You know, like what was that, like Monsters versus Aliens or something like that, where you just have like a miniature city and you beat the shit out of monsters and shit. I think it was like a PlayStation 1 game even. What was the last movie you watched? Oh, the last movie I watched was actually 2 weeks ago, where it was Wallace and Gromit, like the last one that came out. And that's like the first movie we watched in like, fuck, a year? Maybe 2 years? I mean, the last time we probably watched the movie was Lord of the Rings, I think. Like on New Year's. Yeah. It was good. I did enjoy it. Lord of the Rings would be with Elden Ring quality would be hot as hell, not gonna lie. Yeah. Oh yeah, that wasn't the last time. Uh oh no, it wasn't. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was the title of that again, Raj? That's right. We did watch a Bollywood movie. That is true. That is true. Yeah, that was good though. That's a whole medium you're missing out on. I honestly don't think I'm missing out on any. I I honestly don't think so. Like all of the all of the okay, all of the Western stuff that I've watched recently has just been fucking boring. Like I don't care. Like it's like movies is basically the exact same thing that's happening to AAA, right? Like the complaints about like, oh, there's no creativity and blah 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 blah. Like movies are the same thing. Like, oh, like I don't know. There's a lot of indie stuff that's probably like really interesting to watch. But I have this thing where, and I have the same thing with games too, where I am I don't know. I love creating so much that it's freaking hard for me to sit still and just consume something without thinking about creating. Like I have a real issue with that. So that's probably why I don't watch movies, because I'm always like, I'm probably gonna do something else, you know? Do so much more. When the economy is bad, investors don't want to take risks, I guess. Oh no, like, I think it goes deeper than that. And movies and games are quite similar, I think. It's just because they know that like those big blockbuster things usually run away with all the money, so they stake all their money in that. And then they hope of like big returns. And if it doesn't make any returns, then they'll just be like, whoops, okay, that's not gonna work, shut down the studio, whatever, you know? Or, well, in movies' case, it's a little bit different, because then they're like, this movie's gonna suck, so we're gonna not release it and then just claim it from our taxes again, you know? Last movie I watched was Uncut Gems. Watched it a few weeks ago. It's amazing, super stressful movie. Oh my god, pronunciation test? Baranji? Bajan? Fuck's sake. Why do you do this to me? Was watching Superman movies, I could stop thinking about how painful making the falling buildings was. Oh god. Superman. Really thought Raj was gonna say Coco. Oh my god, that's been ages ago. Haven't heard that in a while. Hello, Tobias. Good to see you. Good to see you, Adam. Good to see you all here. Okay, what do we think about doing some community feedback, right? Because otherwise we're just gonna keep yapping. However, if you wanna ask any more questions or bring up like anything else, feel free to drop it in the chat and we can chill out in between. Hey, see ya. Good to see you here. Yeah, let's switch it on over. Let's get cracking. Otherwise, we're just gonna keep yapping, which I do enjoy. I just need to restrain myself, or else I'm gonna be here. Oh, gonna be like in the middle of the night, and I don't want to do that to myself. Give the people what they want. Give them feedback. Yes. Cool. So if we have people from the community here, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll go in order. So the first one to raise their hand is gonna go first. You can have a look. I think for the most part, I did some feedback already. Obviously. Ah, that's fine, Lily. I got it. We'll start with you then. And then we'll go to Charlie. Sounds good. And then Bodhi. Nice. All right, cool. Let's have a look. So let me go to the Discord. Twilight's Tavern. So the first version of the trim sheets, I think the metallic is super noisy. I gotta adjust that. But other than that, I feel super stuck on the trim sheets. When I try to texture with them, the assets look quite bad, and I'm not sure how to make them look good. Okay. I mean, if this is an example of an asset that you can make with a trim sheet, I think this could be a case where it is such a small asset that it might be worth just doing it uniquely. So this is like actually a perfect example of something that can be done unique. That doesn't mean that you can't do it with a trim sheet, but you're gonna have to add so much geometry. And then also on top of that geometry, do like a bunch of like RGB masking to add additional texture complexity. That you might as well save yourself the trouble and just do a unique texture. Because what we're really trying to do with unique textures and trim sheets is we're trying to get the most efficiency out of each workflow, right? So if we're talking about small detailed props, usually we don't want to stick with trim sheets because it's just way easier to actually just be, hey, I'm going to make this like a unique texture. I'm going to add all the detail that I want, and I don't have to get lost in like technical difficulty that you're going to run into. So this is actually a perfect example. So we can just make a unique texture for this. And what I would try to do is test your trim sheets on this guy. I see that you already started to do that. Yeah, see how far you can go before you get somewhat stuck. Right? But I would definitely start with the wood. Start with the wood first, see how far you can get with the wood, and then see how you need to build that up, right? Because it's in moments like these when you feel like you're struggling so much with trim sheets, I usually have the feeling that it's because of the complexity of trim sheets and how to apply them. So whenever we're learning something new, it's good to just condense it to like the smallest thing that we can do. And then just use that as a benchmark, right? That's like a stereotypical thing we do in the industry as well, where if we want to push the quality for something, we'll just get like a little area or a little asset or whatever we want to test, and we drive that to the maximum quality, and we can use that as a benchmark. So yeah, I would test the trim sheet on this guy. That's going to be a good test, and then we can kind of see. What is important with a trim sheet is making sure that you have all the dimensions that are required. So at this point, we're not really focusing on the functionality. Well, we're not really focusing on the visuals. We're focusing on the functionality of the trim sheet. So and then we do the visuals. Cool. And like I said, I don't know what's going on here necessarily, but I like what you're doing here, I think, because this is all metal, right? So I like the way that you're doing that because, like, okay, anything that's metal is going to go on this trim sheet. That's good. Where you're doing this, if this is wood, you're going to need more than that. That's not going to be enough because there is so much wood in the scene that if you don't have enough variation in the wood, you're just not going to have like any visual distinction between all the different bits of wood, right? So we would definitely need a full texture for wood, just so that we can have enough variation between all the wooden beams and the wooden planks and all that kind of stuff to make it work for our scene. And then we can kind of strip this stuff out. I don't know, is that... Assuming those are the banners? I'm not sure, actually. Oh no, we got some, like, trims on there as well. Gonna be wood too, then. Could that fit into one trim? Oh, all the wood? Yeah. Like, that's basically what we said last week, right? Where if you can separate it out... Oh, there's some green wood. The big sign wood is all green wood. Okay, let's have a look. Where is... Oh, I see. I see. Let me get that in here. Yeah. Yep. So with wood or with any color separation, we can... There's a couple of ways that we can go about this, right? I'll give you the simple example. So if we want to add color variation for a trim sheet, is it dependent on like how much variation you need in your scene? There's a couple of ways that we can go about this. The easiest thing, and honestly, if this is your first time doing trim sheets, completely fine with this. Is this workflow. What you're basically going to be doing is you just want to keep the same layout. So you're not changing anything to the layout, right? So let's say you have your Substance Painter file where you've made your wood trim sheet. You're going in there and you're just making a new separate texture and you just change that to have like a green paint on top of it. And that means that if you use the same layout, you can just swap it. Just swap it in the engine. You can basically just like have new textures as the input, and that's the easiest way to get this set up. That is the first and easiest way I would recommend you go for this, because all the stuff, like the second option that I'm going to give you, is a little bit more involved. But that is basically doing a color swap in the engine. Jacob Norris technique? Is that what he does? I feel like, honestly, this is so easy. This is such an easy and approachable technique where it's just like, hey, look, just do the same thing. Just add like another layer to your Substance Painter, right? And just make it green. Cool. That's it. Super simple. Slap that texture into the engine, swap it out into material. The second option is color swap in the engine. That just basically means that you are going to have a mask instead, and then you're going to, instead of having one color, so let's say green, we're going to instead separate that color out with that mask and then decide whatever color we want to switch into it. And then we have full control over the color that we want to tint it with, right? So that is often referred to as like a tint mask or a color overlay or whatever you want to do there, whatever you want to call it. But honestly, this is really helpful. Let's say if you have a whole shopping street and you want to make a bunch of really different looking colors for your buildings, this would be good for that, right? Because yeah, that just makes the most sense, because otherwise we would have to create like a new texture for every new piece of wood that we see, and that would just get too cumbersome, right? So that would be like a case where we can. Again, I would still go for the first one. Easy to set up, easy to execute. Go for that one. So yeah, that means that you're basically going to end up with one variation, which is base wood, and then your second variation is your painted wood. Right? Cool. Let's see. Is there anything else here? Do I need another trim sheet? Because I do feel that not all the wooden elements might fit into it. If you, I think it will, especially with the explanation that we just had now, right? It should definitely fit in a single trim sheet. What you can do is, if you want to split it up further, and let's say you have a lot of wooden ornaments, which I don't know the scene has, but then you can kind of make an atlas of just like all your uniquely made wooden ornaments, and then have a trim sheet for your wood as a separate thing. Again, future proofing, logically made stuff. How can I make the textures look better on the objects? Do I need to add sculpted elements? No, so we already kind of talked about this, right? It's like whenever you have small stuff like this, you want to make unique textures. When you get to some of the bigger items, because and this is the easiest, this is the easy one. Because we sacrificed unique detail, we kind of have to re-add that unique detail in another way. So if we can't really do it in the texture anymore, right? Because we don't have a dedicated normal map for it in this case, then we will have to do that through geometry. So let's say you have an edge of the table. We would have to bevel that edge, right? Because we don't have a dedicated normal map anymore. And you'll see that a sacrifice of working with trim sheets is oftentimes we have to use bevels or just more geometry. Now, there is another technique, but I feel like a lot of people, this is a real brain buster, because there is a way. I'll try to go through this quick. It's called the ultimate trim technique. It comes from a GDC talk that was done for Sunset Overdrive. And you can still find it online, and it explains the whole thing. But basically, what happens is you have a trim sheet that already has 45-degree bevels baked in to the normal map. What happens is, let's say you have your little wooden surface here, right? So let's say this is a wooden beam. If you map your trim sheet to exactly match on the corners, what is going to happen is, let's say we add like a texture on here, and we add a texture on here. Hold on, let me first do something else. This is why it's a brain breaker, right? So, and this is your trim sheet. This is a single section of your trim sheet. And these little areas, they are like 45-degree bevels. Oh, yeah, we lost the camera. Why camera? So we have 45-degree bevels. If we then translate that onto a 3D object, and we map this section onto the top surface and the side surface, both of those little bevels here, right, those little sections, they both have the same bevel. Because they have exactly 45 degrees, it's going to make them sync up perfectly. Where a lot of people get confused is when they're normal map baking, you need to make sure that your normal map is 100% correct. And sometimes if you just have a bake, some people play around with the normal strength or the baking or whatever. It means that you might end up with different um, different normal maps. If this breaks your brain, don't worry about it. I would just stick to a uh, a normal trim sheet and then potentially do it in a build. Is that the technique that's used in The Last of Us? Yeah, I think so. It's I think it's a very common technique. But it is, if this is your first time doing trim sheets, I would honestly not think about that yet and try to do it next. Because that is where I think most people fall off a cliff because they don't the technical stuff always gets in the way of the artistic. One of those use cases where it's like really apparent. All right. So, last thing that I wanted to say here, Lily, with all that trim sheet stuff out of the way, you're not satisfied with your glass. I got a simple solution. Don't do glass. Trust me, it's not worth it. You're going to be struggling with this until the end of time. Just make it, again, do a unique texture that has like, where you bake in like a nice sort of like fake glass. Sometimes you can do it with a Fresnel shader as well, which kind of fakes like the boundaries of a mesh. As you look at it, you can get some like really nice fakery going on there. For the majority of things, it is honestly not worth doing any translucency, well, transparency, especially not for glass. It is such a headache. So, yeah, like I said here, avoid glass. Just make it opaque. Trust me. And this is coming from a guy who made a pretty popular how to make glass in Unreal Engine 4, you know? So, take it from me, don't do glass, because glass fucking sucks. It give me a headache as well. Yeah. It's honestly for what we needed, like it's honestly not even worth it, because in a stylized scene, it's also not gonna look that great either. So I would just honestly avoid it. Cool. Thanks for sharing your work, Lily. Awesome to see those updates. Best of luck with the trim sheets, and feel free to ask in the community if you have any more questions. Tim is trying to protect his job as a glass artist. Dude, I'm doing such a shitty job at defending my title, you know? Like the last time I wrote about this, it was like Unreal Engine 4. So I'm not even claiming my title properly. Oh. Hello Zayad, welcome. Late as usual, but hey, you're still here. That's all that matters. We'll see. We'll give the camera a break for a little bit. Back up around. Is glass expert level? There's a reason why you barely see glass in like a lot of games. Like really look at it. So for example, in Far Cry 6, we had glass on car windows and maybe the occasional modern building. I'm thinking, do we have it anywhere else? Yeah, just like any like windows, right? Like a helicopter window, like car doors, car windows, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It is a headache. And also it is always super costly because yeah, it's relatively it's a big transparent surface, but it's also not gonna help. It's just not fun. Cool. Let's see. So next one in the list we have Charlie, but I think yeah, but unfortunately you missed a deadline though. So I'm gonna have to put you at the end of the queue and we'll see if we have some time left. Sorry for that. Charlie. Bodhi. Bodhi was next. So like a Bodhi. Um Could I get your feedback on RGB painting of the ground, especially the algae? I took a few screenshots, one without RGB, one with more worn. Some wet spots. Do you think the algae texture looks okay now? Would you cover more ground? So I think I'm still missing. I think from all the screenshots, this is definitely the best one. Right? Let me move it to the side as well. Um yeah, now we're getting some like reflections. There's also like the fake light is in all the screenshots actually. But we're getting some sort of variation. But I still want to see more variation. I want to see you push the values way more. Especially when it comes to the base wood. I feel like having something that is not wet and then exaggerating like wet spots by making it wet. Um, that is good. That is probably the way to go about it, right? Because now even this wood compared to like your other wood, like it is like really shiny, right? So again, driving more of that contrast, making sure that it looks nice, right? Because all this stuff still blends together really. And that's the same thing that I have with the algae too. Like in terms of like the color and the roughness and yeah, just the way that it's handled, it still feels like it's really similar, you know? Um so yeah, I would definitely try to push that. I added an example here. I know I know that this is like way more saturated than your scene is, right? But it could still be a good example of like, like this is old rotten wood. Kind of looks like it. But then the saturation of the algae next to it kind of has like this really nice contrast between, so it would be worth experimenting with. And that is multiple things, right? It's the color, it's the roughness, and yeah, the edges of the texture. Because ideally what you have is you have a sort of gradient, right? Where you almost have this like faint stuff happening here that is still like good, like well defined, and it's pretty recognizable. And then it goes into like the thicker sections where it's almost like layers that are being created. Yeah. Plus, I honestly think it could be looking like pretty sick, where you have like a little bit of color coming back into the scene, but very deliberately. Could be cool. Something to try out with. And then, do you think the algae texture looks okay now? And would you cover more ground with it? So we talked about like how it looks already. What could be cool though is if you have, because you have the texture already, right? So you're gonna have the algae texture here, which is cool. That's all well and good. What then becomes interesting is where we try to unify areas by just having a decal. And let's say a decal that kind of adds sections like this. Because also, like, they give you more flexibility again, right? You can have like a base layer and then have like your decals on top of it. It could be a good way of making both areas cohesive. Also, just to go back slightly, like how we kept talking about like the bottles, the glass bottles, right? And how they look like so good. I think what is really happening there is there's an exaggeration of values that is happening, right? Because there's a really cool contrast between like the shiny pieces, dusty pieces. And I think if you get that going on the wood as well, that same sort of thought process, not everywhere, but in certain areas, then we can really drive how interesting the wood itself looks. And then obviously it becomes a challenge to like balance everything, right? Because we don't want to make it super chaotic. We want to kind of use it in areas where it kind of matches. Yeah, decals could be cool, and that gives you like more freedom to work with it as well. I'm always scared to make it too chaotic. Well, here's a tip though, right? Like you should always make it super chaotic and then dial it back, because it is really difficult to do it the opposite way, where if you try to do it incrementally, like that's going to take way longer than just being like, hey, for example, like this, right? The way that I would do this is I would start with this as the base color. Like same sort of saturation, same sort of intensity. Get that into your scene and then see, okay, it really is too much. I'm going to have to dial it back, right? But that you only know that if you try that from the beginning, right? It is easier to go like 150% and then dial it back to where you want it than it is to like increase like 5%, then another 5%. And that can be applied to anything, right? Like it can be applied to composition, it can be texturing, it can be applied to proportions. You can always be like, hey, look, I'm just really gonna go fucking nuts with these proportions. And then you see like, yeah, this is too much. Okay, proving my point, but I do like what's happening here. I just need to chill it down a little bit. Yeah. Good stuff. And same with the water puddles as well, right? I would really, really try to drive like the variation where it's almost, I don't think this is gonna work at all. But let me give it a try. And I wanna focus you on one area specifically, right? Because I'm only looking at this area. But you can already see that just with like shitty adjustments in like Photoshop, like we're getting some like really interesting contrast between like all the surfaces, right? If we compare like before and after, like the surface starts to read like it's actually wet because the wet areas are more properly defined compared to the other areas. Yeah, right? Like even, I mean, of course, like there's areas that's way too dark. It's just like a simple brightness and contrast. You can kind of see, even though the overall picture is way too dark, like the contrast is increasing the contrast between everything. Just it adds a lot, in my opinion. Like a scene like this, especially. So yeah, that could be something to play around with. Definitely giving it a try. Let's see, what was it again? Punchy contrast. Yeah, honestly, like if I had to give a, what would you call it? Like a suggestion, right? Whenever you feel stuck, sometimes it can be really intimidating to do stuff in 3D because it feels like, oh, I need to go back to Substance Designer, tweak a couple of things here, go back to Unreal, do a bunch of stuff in here. Honestly, quick screen grab, take it into Photoshop, smash like brightness and contrast and do like a bunch of color correction stuff and see if that looks better or not, right? Because you can learn so much from just doing like a couple of quick adjustments and then just being like, that is the direction that I'm going. Cool. And now, because obviously we're artists, we need something visual to drive our decision making. So now that we know, okay, this is cool, I have something, now we can, I don't know, set that as a desktop background and you kind of have an aim that you work towards. It's almost like you're doing mini concept art stuff for yourself. Yeah, cool, buddy. Great update though. Like making really good progress. This is the stuff that can usually bog down like a program, the process of like a project, right? But don't let that beat you down. These are the moments where you can really like fine tune, experiment, like really find how we're gonna make some cool visuals for the project. Yeah, keep at it. Good stuff, Bodhi. Cool. Who was next? Sergio was next, and then Abhishek. Here we go. That's the next scene from Sergio. Cool looking stuff. Completely forgot who he's that's blanking on the name. Have you been in Ghent? Yeah, I've been there a lot. I've been there frequently. We used to go there like quite often actually. It's a beautiful city. I'm from Antwerp, but that is literally like, I don't know, like an hour away from Ghent. And Antwerp has a lot of beautiful architecture as well. So all of these places, like all that like Gothic architecture, very recognizable. Yeah. Then we got like geen belastingen, no taxes. This stuff is like very traditional, like beer plaques that we have in Belgium. You see them hanging everywhere. This is saying France go away. So yeah, very typical Belgium. Oh my god. This is like a Belgian beer brand. No taxes again. It isn't raining though, so it can't be Belgium. I feel like everyone says that, but it's the same weather as in the UK. And honestly, most of the time, it's beautiful. Let's see, what else is on here? What does that say? The Belgian one. I think this might say something. I can't read the last thing, but it's like freedom from and then something. Oh my god. Pretty cool. This is a DIY store in Belgium. Some good beer, another good beer. A lot of Belgian beer in here. It's so funny. Like all these little quotes that are just hinting at like some of the stupid stuff that's happening in Belgium since forever. Cool. Okay. Enough distractions. Let's have a look. I do love his work though. Oh, so beautiful. Size between construct and block out is so clean. Yeah, it's cool. Great stuff. I want to slightly reduce the scale of the buildings while keeping the same proportion. Feel the scale is off by a lot or just slightly? Is there anything that looks odd at this stage in terms of proportions? I'm not too sure though. You wanted to reduce the scale of the buildings while keeping the same proportions. But they usually go hand in hand though. Right? Or are you talking about like, no, like the amount of them is the same as well. So I'm not sure what you mean by that. Because I mean, the proportions, they do look really similar, right? That's also why we got this cutaway as well. It is literally the same, right? I got a Manny as a scale reference. I think it feels quite small. Let me see. Where's the mannequin? Oh, there we go. Manny. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, you got like a guy here, right? And he's like hunched over. So what would he be? He's also on the older side too. That need to say. Have a look. We're gonna do it like the scientific method, right? Because this is almost on the same kind of line. So we can then just transpose it here, I guess. Look, super scientific. You know? So I don't think it's too far off. Look, you know. Yeah. I honestly don't think it's too far off. Honestly, it's fine. Like with this kind of stuff, like it also doesn't need to be perfect, right? Like I appreciate the attention to detail, but as long as you get like the visual proportions correct, you're good. And I think you matched them really well. So I don't think it's too big of an issue here. So that works fine. Also, if you look at just most concept art, you're gonna find that like this car and this car, they're quite different in proportions, even though the distance between them is not too great, you know? So yeah, you have to take some like artistic liberty. If I use the concept art's main shot as a, yeah, of course, why not? The only thing to keep in mind there is just stereotypical things, right? Like credit the person that's made it. Like once you're done, add them in your ArtStation post. It's totally fine. I am, and this might be a surprise or maybe even controversial. I don't think you necessarily need to ask for permission if you do credit them at the, because I don't know if it's on. So there's an important caveat there though. Like if it's not for any commercial purposes and it's just personal work and you're never gonna sell it, that's a restriction, right? Like then you shouldn't ask for permission. If you want to do a commercial project, of course you have to ask for permission, and there's probably gonna be like revenue split set up or something like that. But yeah, if you're not doing anything commercial and it's just like it's an ode to like this person's, as long as you credit them properly. Let's see. Captain Kidd was asking, how do you even match the concept perspective so well? Yeah, like a lot of back and forth. You can add the concept to a plane and then just have that attached to your camera so that you can kind of work towards like the spec of the concept. There's also a program called F-Spy, which I've seen a lot of people use, which lets you match the proportions and the perspective of a given picture. But yeah, I don't think that's built into Unreal. Right. Still on dead camera mode. Oh, we have a little bit of battery. Let's go. Yeah, cool stuff. Yeah, don't really have too much to add here. I'll make a couple of notes. So concept scale match well. Same for proportions. Second thing is credit the art. I'm assuming you know that already, but it's a good call out. It's a good reminder for everybody. Connor B is asking, I mean, what if their work is commercial? So like concept for like X Studios unreleased game, you don't really touch those, right? Um no, I don't think that matters even because if your work is not commercial, then they can't really do anything about it necessarily, right? As soon as your work then becomes commercial, that's when you get into big trouble, right? Because you're trying to make money off an IP that they still hold the license to. But if you're not gaining anything from it, then I don't think I don't think they can necessarily do anything about that, really. It gets a little bit trickier when there's like a studio involved just because they have people looking out for that stuff, right? But I mean, that's why fan art is a thing, right? I feel like this is just like a side branch of fan art where it's like, hey, look, I love what you did with this. I'm just going to do my own interpretation of it, like try to recreate it. Fan art, right? SPy is for Blender. I think SPy is available for not only for Blender, but also Maya and Max. I think. I've never used it myself, so I might be wrong. Sergius asks, saying, I do this project for a challenge, and there's a few concept art pieces suggested by the organizer. The one I use is included. I think it's fine if I just credit at the end. So in this case, this is interesting, right? So in that case, the challenge that is organizing it should ask for permission. Because if they're trying to organize like a bigger thing out of it, and they're in most cases, those places that run challenges, they are set up as a business, right? So that's where it gets like a little bit like grayish area. So they should have asked the person if they can use that concept art. Or at least that's where I feel like if you're starting to make a business out of it, then it kind of leans more towards the commercial side, even though you're not monetizing the challenge itself. There might be other ways. That's where it kind of goes into a gray area. Which is also the reason why, for people that remember the old team challenges, what we did is we actually paid people to um to get the licenses for the art that we used on the banners. I think they got that all figured out. All the concept art pieces are from the same artist. Yeah, exactly. They usually do like good diligence, especially if it's like a community or a place that is running a challenge. Most of them are artists as well. So usually do good due diligence. Hmm. Cool. Thanks, Sergio. Best best of luck and have fun. Who was next in line? We got Abhishek next. Tim, no worries. Forward to seeing this come together. Abhishek. Here we go. Cool. Would love to get some feedback on how the overall scene looks and feels. Also would love to know how good the lighting looks. So I think that's the main point that I had is the lighting feels really flat, right? Especially if you look at the overview of the scene. This might be one of the cases where you have to sacrifice the visibility of all the stuff you've made for the mood of the scene, right? So I would definitely get some contrast, get some more volumetric lighting in. So with volumetric, I mean that you can actually get a better understanding of the depth of the scene. So that I'm not talking about like filling this up with smoke, but that it doesn't feel like a flat image that is like pretty neutrally lit. That we actually get an understanding of the depth. Emphasizing some of the computer screens, perhaps, especially the one that has like the most information on it, could be cool. And then also, yeah, trying to construct like a better hierarchy in the scene. So, what did I note down here? So, yeah, the contrast we already talked about that, and then have a better focus of where you want us to look, because with lighting, what we're trying to do is we're trying to guide people, right? So we always need to keep that in mind. And when we're guiding people, you have to be very conscious of where we're guiding them to. where, and so if you know where you want people to look, then we need to figure out how we're going to. This is, we talked about this last time. It's usually done by using hierarchy, right? So you have to visually be able to say like, hey, look, I want to focus here first. Then I want you to jump over here, let's say, and then maybe over here. And then think about like how you're going to facilitate that through the viewer. Because that means number one is going to be the brightest spot, number two is going to be the second brightest spot, and then potentially number three, just to give some examples, third brightest. Then we can think about like, okay, cool. I want you to look there. Let's see what that looks like. We then duplicate this guy. And then we're just going to play around with things. Right, we're gonna do this. Highlight stones. I'm gonna make it like real apparent. This is gonna be super heavy-handed, but hopefully. And then we can kind of compare, right? And be like, okay, cool. We got some more contrast. We're definitely seeing what is happening here more. I feel like those two areas that we kind of noted down, like 1 and 2, they're kind of blending together. So either what I would do is change the prop placement, so like move the laptop more to the right, or just have like the screen itself like dimmer or something like that, because they kind of blend together a little bit. And then yeah, maybe we can do something cool where we have like the light that comes from like all the screens that kind of creates like little area of light. Kind of see that would be kind of pulling you in again. Put out the but it's really thinking about like, okay, where do we want people to look? What do I want them to see? How can I facilitate that? Because everything is kind of blending out from this point. And then maybe even at this point, we could be like, I don't like how much this on the bottom left is distracting me. I'm just gonna change things around, you know? Yeah. But yeah, more contrast, leads to more focus. Think about where people are going to be looking and then how you can facilitate them looking there. Then where your second question was more things that could be improved upon, like texturing, decals, all that kind of stuff. I focused on a detail shot because if you're gonna do detailed shots, like I require to see detail, which sounds so stupid to say out loud, but I feel like what a lot of people do is they have additional shots, but then they're just throwaway, right? They don't have the ability to stand on their own 2 feet. And I want them to be more detailed and have more like little bits happening, right? Because this almost feels, we strip everything out, something is happening here, but it feels super generic. You know, it just feels like, okay, I'll just put some clutter on the table, right? What I want you to do is pay more attention to like the detail of the assets, and then also, yeah, dive deeper into the story. You know, you got Neuromancer, you got like Ghost in the Wires, like all these cool books. If we dive deeper into that, then maybe, you know, like have like some post-it notes or something like that underneath it. With just some like notes on it, right? Like notes from the book, perhaps. So that you can really see like the chaos that's going on in their brain and just being like, okay, what is really happening? Maybe they spilled a coffee, but they didn't have time to clean, so you can kind of see like an old coffee stain like underneath it. Um, and I wrote some like random ideas, right? It's like old post-it notes, crumpled up stuff, spilled coffee, cigarettes, like random gunk. And with random gunk, it could literally be, a forgotten chewing gum. I don't know, some other stuff, you know. And then also, yeah, just adding more detail to the books instead of them almost being, because you can kind of see it's just like a cube with a texture on it. And I'm being very direct about this, right? Like I want to see just the spine being bent a little bit. And then also like a little bit of a dent in the book, maybe. Or like this magazine being flipped through so many times that it's like curling up a little bit. Maybe the top of it is like has like a curl here, you know? And it's that kind of stuff that really makes a detail shot work. So you always have a choice with detail shots where it's like, okay, either I go in like all in or I remove them from the sequence. And you have to kind of decide with like all these shots which are like the most important to the story or which show like a side of your skill set that you think the other ones aren't showing off, right? Because otherwise it runs the risk of just being like, oh yeah, this is a cool scene, but what am I looking at? Like, like I want you to like fully dedicate yourself. Be like, okay, there's clutter in the sink. Like have the clutter like really pile up and have it like stick out, you know? Like really go crazy with it. Like really play into the idea of like, okay, this guy is an absolute pig and like every single thing they do is just like left on the counter. There's like some rotten food, there's spilled stuff all over the place. Like there's like random gunk that's spilled out of the microwave. Because then we're adding um we're adding like exaggeration, which I'm gonna completely misspell. Question mark, huh? But if you add that level of exaggeration, that is where it becomes like really interesting to look at because now you have the contrast of this pristine looking like laptop next to like a bunch of dirt, right? Like just literal filth, just stuff sticking out everywhere, like all the plates sticking out, like there's a bunch of unopened cans, open cans, like random stuff falling out, but he is still taking care of like all this tech, right? Then we have that like interesting contrast that is happening. Just really driving that home. Because that is if you really think about like a game, right? What is gonna happen is we're gonna enter this room, I'm gonna scan, and then I'm gonna go to the objective. That is a second or half a second that I get to take things in. If it doesn't grip me, then I'm just walking past. Nima is asking, okay, so a question. Wouldn't that level of exaggeration create inconsistency not with just a laptop, but more well-maintained cabinets without any smudges or anything? Well, yeah, see, that's what I mean, right? You have to be able to take that through to the whole thing. Like if you're trying to convince me that this person is a pig, I want to see a lot more. And when you create like those smudges and those little things, right? That is super quick to do because usually that's just a decal, right? So once you have a decal for smudges or just like random stuff, like coffee stains and like random gum, you can then use that in one shot, but then also use that in the shot that is on the table. And now everything becomes more consistent because you have this consistent set of decal stuff happening. But that is a good point. You can even add like like one cabinet is like slightly open. You can kind of see that there's like more stuff in there. Maybe this cabinet like door is slightly unhinged. There's like smears like all over it because he touched it with like a grubby bean filled hands. Like there's so much cool stuff that you can do with like just decals and smudges. And it doesn't need to, like, I know that this sounds like a lot of work, right? But have a look at what you already have, and it's literally cool. I have like a can here. You probably have like way more can. Just open it up, slap a tileable metal on the inside, and you're good, right? Like now you have a set of bean like cans that you can like have open and closed and crushed, and you can make those assets in. You know, if you want to have like a crushed can that is literally just going in, adding a couple of loops, crushing it down, cool. Now you have a crushed can. That's it. And then yeah, you might have to do some additional work when it comes to the decals, but they're so versatile. You can literally use them all. They're gonna be so handy. Cool. Yeah, that is in general, that is what attention to detail really comes down to. Thank you for that question, Nima. Appreciate it. I hope that was helpful. Abhishek, feel free to ask any questions. Help with anything else. Yeah. Overall, though, I know that we went into feedback immediately. Overall, job well done with the amount of assets, with the amount of stuff created for the scene. It's a really interesting setup, really compelling setup as well. And I think overall, like the story is in a really good spot, right? So all the stuff that I kind of get back on is more just it is polish, right? It's taking something from like 80% to like 100%. That's what we're really talking about. Because yeah, all that stuff that I said here about like adding more geometry and all that kind of stuff can be added here too. Can be added here, like where it's not just a box, like the box kind of has then kind of stuff in it. You can add that to any surface. Yeah. Good stuff, Abhishek. Looking forward to seeing more updates. And yeah, thanks for sharing it, man. This is an awesome little scene. Well, little. Spend a lot of time on this. And it shows. It really does. Yeah. Great stuff. Sharing. Cool. Let's see. Was there anyone else in line? Cool. I think we're free to roam. So we're gonna be blasting through a couple of these. We're gonna start with Ethernet is better. Ethernet is better. It's been a while since we've seen updates. The last update was, oh my god, was that March? Okay, it's March. Yeah, last update was in March. We have an update here where the house is being redone to be made as a modular kit. I want to be real transparent here. I was confused because I don't really see a need to make a house like this into a modular kit. It's cool that you want to do it, but to me it felt like the house just needed like a little bit more polish, and then we were almost done with the project. Honestly. So yeah, what I really wanted to highlight is next time you think about like, okay, I'm going to use a modular kit, you need to think about what the strengths are of a modular kit and when to use them. I really want to highlight this because it's important to think about the different workflows and what they're really good at and what their drawbacks are. So in this case, you're making a singular house. That is usually not worth doing a whole modular kit for. Because you might as well, if you want to go for something that looks really unique, you might as well keep it really unique and then just be really smart with how you texture it. So a bunch of tileables, a bunch of trim sheets, and then you have full flexibility on how you make the building. Because then you're not thinking about like, okay, how does this piece fit with this piece? No, I need to keep this in mind. You have all the freedom and you're removing technical overhead. you're focusing more on artistic input. And that's the ideal position where we want to be, right? For something that is unique, we usually approach it in a way when it comes to texturing. So that being said, let's have a look at how we can improve this modular kit. Because I highlighted some seams. You brought up that try to hide repetition and create a natural look. But if you really look at the house itself, it is pretty easy to spot the modules from the modular scene, right? So I highlighted this one, for example, another one here. And the reason why we can see them is because all the planks, they just end in the straight line. So what do we do with that? What do we do about that? We need to make sure that if we have a modular kit, for example, like this guy here, you can kind of see clearly where the kit ends. We just need to do like breakup of that repetition. So that means that we go outside of the bounds of what you set out before, right? And then we just extend some pieces. We have some pieces go in, and that creates like more variation. And that variation is going to read way more natural than it would do without that variation, right? Now, here's the tricky thing though. If this is the way that you want to go about it, that also means that you need to be clever with how you do your variation. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have these little areas sticking out. That means that you can't have a plank there from the other module, right? So you're going to have to do some puzzling there. To your benefit though, this broken up house with a lot of planks missing is going to be easier to puzzle them together because you have more flexibility with where broken planks are going. But that's the way that I kind of would puzzle them together. It does mean that, let's say you have this corner and they match up, right? Ba-ding, they match, all's good. That also means that if you use this wall in any other permutation of your kit, that it needs to also match this one. Also needs to match with this edge, and this edge, and that edge as well. This is where the technical overhead comes from when you're talking about a modular kit, right? Because now, instead of doing it all unique and everything is bespoke, we're actually running into issues where we create a puzzle for ourselves that, depending on the kit, becomes more and more difficult to solve for. Because we need to keep in mind all these little things. Yeah. But that would be it. So I noted this down here. It's like how to hide seams is basically breaking up the seam and then puzzling them together. If you have a tiny kit like you're doing here, that's going to be fine. If this was like a real actual kit that you would use where you're thinking about walls, you're thinking about so many variations of walls, like roofs, like all that kind of stuff, you're going to make it so much more complex for yourself than it is honestly worthwhile. Yeah. So keep that in mind. And best of luck. Yeah. Future iterations. Cool. We're going to be jumping over to Jahid. This is going to be a quick one as well because it's mostly going to be the same last week. So Jahid is saying, update for this week, try to brighten the area and lower the intensity of the wall lamps. So I was curious because I was quite confused. Looking at the intensity of the wall lamps, it almost looked like nothing changed. Because this is the old one, so this is last week. And we do have some really cool lighting coming in here, like the blue light. I think that works really nice. I said so as well. Although we have to be careful about the highlight that's being created. We have to be careful about any bright spots that we add into the scene, right? Because bright spots will attract our attention, especially if they're surrounded by darker areas. So that's a warning here. Be careful of those areas. I don't know if we did this last time. It doesn't look like we did, but I wanted to give you a tool to make sure that you can have a better indication of how bright or how dark your lights need to be. So I gave you a tool here. It's really simple. We just go in black and white. So you just take a picture, just turn it to black and white, and see and actually have a look at the values of your scene. Because values are really good in terms of stripping out all the additional stuff that we don't need, right? So we're not focused on color, we can't get distracted by it. But what is going to happen now with these values is we directly see, hey, these are still the brightest areas. So even though, oh, this is actually the wrong. Let's actually get this guy and do the same thing. Okay. Right. Gonna make a little bit more sense. Stuff down. Okay, cool. Since, like I was saying, we have to be careful about the brightest spots still in your scene. Because none of them are this brighter spot. So if you still want to have the focus here, it's still not working. Because these lights, they are still too light in comparison. Right? And we even added like an additional one. So be careful and do this little training as you're looking at your scene. Right? Because that's the main way that we're actually gonna see where the values are. And do that every time, right? This is a good way of actually seeing where the focus is gonna go. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that really quickly. Like I said, the blue light coming in looks good. Be careful for that highlight that is creating. Yeah. Because I think, yeah, we're still really missing that focal point. Still not drawn to like the end of it. There's still so much distraction happening in the scene where we really need to condense how it looks. Did I? Yeah. Oh, also, last thing that I'll add, quick one, is we changed the composition to look like a bit more up. We're seeing way more of the ceiling, which is honestly pretty boring. I mean, that's what ceilings are meant for, right? Like, we don't add like a bunch of interesting stuff to the ceiling because that's not where we're going to be watching. So I would say lower the camera back, what we had before, and lessen the amount of ceiling that we have. I'll give you another tip here. There's something called the rule of thirds. Which is basically you take your frame. So you have your entire frame of your scene, and we just divide that up into 3 parts. And where you want to put like your areas of interest are going to be on those points. Super simple, but also super helpful. And then usually if you wanna put two, let's say 2 points of focus, you put one here. Usually I do this. So I do one here and I do a second one here. You kind of want to use diagonals wherever possible. You don't want to have like number 1 here and number 2 down here. Because that's going to look weird because now all the focus is centered on the bottom. So really quick. Hope that helps, Saeed. Speed running through some stuff here. We got Will. Good to see your stuff, Will. Always nice to look at what you're doing. Could I get some feedback and your thoughts on how I can improve it? Yeah, I added like 2 notes. It's looking great already. You know, like really good. Interesting. Okay, I'll bring that up later. Really good pass already. liking the textures. The thing that I do have to say about the textures is that around these objects, it kind of feels really generic because it kind of just feels like, oh, it's just like it's nicely encircling this area. So what I would suggest in this case is think about the way that it functions, right? And that's why I kind of got I kind of did a little bit of thinking with you have the sewn in part at the top. Then you have like the sewn in flap here. That means that this entire flap is going to open, right? Which also means this is where it gets helpful for texturing, is that most of the stuff is going to be, most of the gunk and most of the wear and tear and most of the dirt is going to be in crevices that are going to be static, right? They're not going to be changing. So that means that we have the most wear in those areas. So these areas that I highlighted, they're going to receive the most wear and tear. And in the rest of it, because it moves up and down, that's where you're going to see less of it. So it's marrying the functionality of the piece with where you do the texturing. And that can be applied to like all of this stuff too. Because if this is going to be opening, right? If this strap is basically, there's probably a like a belt buckle or something like that on top of here that attaches to this. If that happens, then that means that this is also going to be hanging around at a certain point, which means that the dirt on here is going to be less than the dirt on here, especially around this guy, because this has been on there from the beginning, whereas this will probably be looser and it's going to have like regions where it's going to be tight towards it, so it's going to receive more dirt compared to other areas. That is the sort of stuff that can really influence like how you texture something, right? Like the functionality of the asset usually drives where you have your dirt and your texturing. Yeah. Also, I wanted to highlight something because as I was doing this before, as like my prep, I got a question for you. And I actually know the answer to it now. That's why I was so surprised in the beginning. Can this flap even open? And the answer to that is no. This flap can't open. You made a small mistake here, where this belt is supposed to go between these guys, because then you can take this belt out and then that flap opens upwards. Whereas in yours, this little section is sewn onto the little strap, which means that the strap is now attached to the flap, which means that you can't open the hatchet. Right? That's why we see these guys. This one seems to be broken. But you can see that it's meant to go underneath it, so that if you remove the strap from here, then like this goes up. That's how you open a box, right? Anything, but the functionality does matter. Yeah, same thing like this. Like this is perfect, right? In this one, I mean, it's a detail, but if it's open, you would probably expect it to just flapping down. Pretty cool. The other thing that I wanted to say is driving the difference between the two home. So what I mean by that is you have like a strong suitcase on top and then like a softer one at the bottom. I would honestly make the silhouette like even softer than it already is. Just drive home that it's just like scrunched a little bit, by the way, but that it's more forgiving when it comes to the leather part, because that will drive the difference between them two home. Again, it's exaggerating what is there, right? And making sure that instead of them reading both as like squarish, we have one that's more organic and then one that is more like straight. Yeah, softening up that silhouette could be really, could be an easy win. Hello, Marmoset Emperor, welcome back. Oh, we're back talking about Little Nightmares 2. How is the background modeled? How is the background modeled? In Blender? I don't know. In any sort of modeling program? I have not played it actually, so I can't really speak to the specific techniques that they used. But if I'm thinking about like what I can tell, it's either gonna be modeled in 3D or it's gonna be matte painting. Which I think is highly likely that it's number 1 compared to number 2. Because matte painting is basically where you just have like a static image that is painted by a concept artist that serves as the background, right? And then you can have multiple planes to create like a little bit. Can we see this technique? I don't have an example for it, so I have no idea. And I don't think we're gonna have time during this chat to really deviate from the feed. Still like a bunch of people to go through. It's not ZBrush. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no. I mean, yeah, if it's like in general, if it's going to be more organic, it might be ZBrush. If it's going to be more hard surface stuff, then it's probably going to be any other modeling program, right? In general terms, that's usually the way that it ends up. Cool. Cameron wanted to highlight something. We're going to be talking about thoughts on the composition. I mean, I like it. I like that we're getting like more clothes off. We're seeing some like boxes coming in of fast food takeaway stuff. Yeah. Using any opportunity to have like some personal memorabilia, you know, that would be cool. We can even have like little frame, like a couple of little frames like in the back. Because even though it's I do feel like they're a good, like everyone is gonna have like picture frames with them. So it's a good way to tell something with a story by just having like a couple of picture frames. And maybe just have them. Oh, what could be cool is having like a stack of them. And then maybe we see just like one that is just like flying towards the cameras. Pull on there. And we have a stack of them next to it. Yeah, composition, good. And there was a question of post-processing volumes. Because yeah, you shrunk the post-process volume down to be basically surrounding the vinyl player, right? The issue with that is your camera is still out of your volume, so it's only gonna affect how the stuff inside of the volume is gonna react, right? So that is something to be very aware of, unless you set it to unlimited or something like that. I can't remember. It's a different word. But then that defeats the purpose, right? Because you want it to affect a certain region. So what I suggest, and I've not used these myself, but there is something called color correction regions that are more for specific area adjustment. I don't know how far they can go. And I don't know what settings you're looking for, right? Because color correction regions, they're more for specific color correction adjustments or region. But if you're doing some like post-processing volume stuff that plays around it, like translucency and refraction, I don't know if that's available in those regions. I would assume not, but yeah. But honestly, like this comes down to, wait, what is the issue here? So the refraction is seemingly that extreme that it distorts the position of the stairs. Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, because there's glass on the window. Okay, I didn't read that completely. Um, cool. I thought you moved the staircase. Oh no, but that's refraction. Honestly, I would just remove refraction from the window. Like, if refraction is the issue, just remove it from it. Simple as that, you know? Because usually, and especially in your case, if you're gonna have like a raindrop shader, that is gonna be enough to signify that that is gonna be like a window. Refraction works really well on like curved surfaces or where you have like a lip or something. Really well. On anything else, it kind of sucks. So if refraction is the issue, just remove the refraction. Simple as that. Yeah, remove refraction. That's an easy one. Let's have a look. A quick one here. Oh, Mikval is here as well. Let's do a Mikval first. Let's see if we got some more questions in the chat. So you are an environment artist. How much time do you learn to become an environment artist? Well, first of all, I'm still learning. I've been doing this professionally for 10 years, right? There's so much to learn. It's a constant thing that you keep up with. Um, I if we're really talking about learning, so I've been drawing since I was a kid, which had a big influence on me becoming an artist, right? So keep that into account. When it comes to actual practical learning, I spent 4 years in uni, spending all my time mostly dedicated to environment art. Like I was just trying to spend as much time as I could on environments. That's all I was doing in uni. So yeah, let's say 4 years to just get into the industry, and then yeah, on a day-to-day basis, still trying to refine my skills and get better at what I do. And the next question is, do you know how to use Modo? I do not know how to use Modo because Modo is honestly not used in games apart from a couple of examples. So many new games use Modo for making environments? I don't think so. Like, you might be talking about like Machine Games. That is the only studio that I know that like uses Modo. Especially in a time where you can have Blender, you know? As like an option. I mean, I would be curious, like, what other games are made in Modo? Oh, Modo. Oh, I didn't even know that. Modo is also discontinued. Interesting. Oh, yeah, that makes it even easier for a business. No one's gonna pick that up when they do like a new studio now. Split Fiction? Not in Modo? Why would they do that? Doom the Dark Ages? I doubt it. Are you sure about that? I have my doubts around that. Doom the Dark Ages made in Modo? I have my doubt around that. Our station you see? I'll have to look it up then afterwards. I mean, so what is also happening at the same time is that it is more and more likely that as an artist you get to decide what you want to model in. Like, yeah, sure, like the companies usually have a program that has like all the tools embedded, but it is highly likely that you might use any tool that you're comfortable with and then just get that into the tool that they have and then just use that to get it in the engine. That's like very common. That's how I did like the last couple of projects that I worked on. I just model everything in Blender, and then I just transport it to whatever program they have, usually Max, and then boop. So this might be a case where like a specific artist might be using both. I'd be curious if that's the case or not. Because yeah, that doesn't make like any business sense, right? Especially using like a tool that's discontinued. But yeah. That's why I'm saying, like, in the majority of cases, you're not gonna see Moto. It's just gonna be Max. Like 3ds Max is the well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like Indiana Jones is made by Machine Games, so they're still made in Moto. So I know that like Machine Games has been working in Moto for the longest time because their hard surface design specifically, right? I think this might be this is not only like his but there's a bunch of people that were really good in Moto um that would then be working at those companies and that kind of spread around and then Moto became like the standard tool that Matthias Delvetero, for example, is a good example of that. I think Tor Frick as well. He uses Moto for a long time. I'm not sure about him. But I'm pretty sure that he did. But Matthias Delvetero, definitely. And he used to work, or maybe still works, at Machine Games. I actually don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I've not heard of many games using it. That's interesting. I have to look it up. To be fair, it was discontinued last year. Yeah, that's interesting. I have not heard about that. I mean, honestly, for games, like, I've never really heard about Moto. Connor B. Yeah, see, that's exactly the thing that I was thinking. So I'm seeing Blender, Maya, and Moto used by various artists on Split Fiction. That's exactly what I was assuming. So I think what they have set up is they have a program agnostic pipeline. The only thing that matters in that pipeline is that you can just get it into the engine, and what you use at that point doesn't matter. Well, aren't they using so Split Fiction uses Unreal, right? Is that right? Or am I crazy? Because if that's the case, the only thing that you need at the end is an FBX, right? And most of the tools are probably going to be developed on the engine side rather than the DCC side, which is yeah, or they just have like an agnostic way of working. Because honestly, my experience has always been with in-house engines, right? Where the tech debt and like the suite of tools that is built into your modeling program is way bigger than any new studios that are starting up and using Unreal, for example. Yeah. In that case, it makes way more sense than just like as an artist, you can just pick up whatever you want. If you want to use Moto, yeah. Why people are using Maya if Blender is free? I mean, it's the same thing that you brought up, right? Like people are still using Moto. It's just because that is the workflow that the company demands. It's literally that. Yeah, Moto is free and also deprecated. So that's a huge risk. Well, but like you're not paying the license, right? If you go work for a company, you as the individual, you don't care that much. Also, most people or most studios that are embedded within Maya, they've been using Maya for such a long time that they get like their licenses at a cheaper price because they buy them in bulk. And then also, if you look at the expenses like a AAA developer has, like having to pay like tens or let's say tens of thousands of dollars on like a program, is not too bad, you know? Stingray engine is also interesting. It was discontinued in 2018, but Helldivers 2 was made using it. Wonder if they just develop it in-house now. Well, there's another game that yeah, Fat Shark, all those games. Yeah, 40K Dark Tide, right? Was made in that. Fucking crazy. I mean, there's still games that are coming out in UDK, which is like Unreal Engine 3, right? There's still a lot of games that are made in like really early versions of Unreal Engine 4. I think Honkai Star Rail, I think, was developed in Unreal Engine 4, I think. So it's not like, oh, there's small developers that are just working away. It's like, no, like big developers are still using it. Do you do the same course like Tiago on Gumroad? No, we're currently building one, but that's gonna be a while. So it's not gonna be the same one as like most stereotypical courses. We're trying to build a more flexible and modular system. So we have to take. It's more of a headache, but I think it's more future proof. Or at least I hope it will be. Yeah. Mikhail, let's dive into some feedback. Feel free to ask more questions and we'll weave them in. Let's see. This pattern is frying my mind. You're just working on the tiles, right? Trying to make the pattern, but it's difficult. Lost some feedback on the texture so far in noise, shape. Yeah, I think in terms of shape, right? Not doing you any favor by dropping these. Let's actually get rid of it. We don't need you. Ugh. That better? Yeah. So first thing that I'll say is that your pattern is more rounded, right? That's the first thing that like immediately catches my eye. Honestly, oh, this is a cool one. So you're trying to sort of replicate this one as well. Very cool little pattern. There's only so much you can have images. Get rid of this guy as well. So yours is more rounded. So we're going to be looking at it from a high level. So more sharpness is the first thing. I think it's just like it comes down to like using less bevels and trying to retain crispy shapes. This was a thing that I used to do as well. Like I used to use bevels on everything because it just would smooth out like some of the values, right? But it also makes like everything look soft. Ah. It's hard to get away from that. Yeah, or the distance node, yeah, same thing, right? It just makes all the surfaces rounded. You kind of need to dot it back and retain some of that like angularity to some of the shapes. I think what could be cool is you have two, right? So you have rounded shapes and you have like angular shapes. Then with, I don't know, sort of scattering, just like filter in some more rounded shapes within the sharper one. Something like that. I think overall, the pattern itself is quite nice. You have a solid basis, right, for the pattern. I think what's going to help a lot is just like at the end of all of it, just doing a warp. Because what is nice about this pattern is that you kind of have like a little bit of warping. Kind of see that lines. That is super easy to do, but that's going to help a lot with just like the readability. Whereas in your case, it's just, it feels really straight. Draw on top of it. It just feels really straight. And that's gonna help a lot with the readability. Warp for a more natural look. I think the pattern itself is going to be annoying. Like I'm thinking about the base color as well. You need to use, I think you're using a gradient map now to get most of your base color done. I would have a very subtle base map, like a base gradient map, and then add additional layers on top of that by using more noise, because that is usually going to give you a better result. Then if you can combine that with like masking out like certain areas or certain rocks, that's going to give you a better result. So a subtle gradient map. And more noises, coloring more noises, and just being relatively subtle with the layering on top of it. I think I'm gonna do all the big shapes and then add small rocks and such in the crevices. You could also do that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, feel free to experiment. I'm not gonna say yes or no. I feel like most of the cool stuff that I've made, it's just because I was having fun with experimenting, right? It's just a gradient with some light gray and white currently. Okay, that's good. Oh yeah, because you were just asking for like feedback on the shapes and stuff, right? But to deviate from the topic you're discussing, but since you're talking about material creation as substance designer, would buying the environment artist handbook on your website help? Honestly, it's probably better if you just become a member of our community. Get the handbook for free. Get that on top of your membership. I've been meaning to learn designer, but haven't found any good YouTube tutorial yet. Oh, really? We have a bunch of good ones like on our channel. There's a bunch of good ones on NVIDIA. NVIDIA does like a series on like substance designer with Javier Perez. Those are really good as well. Shit, there's a person who makes like really good designer tutorials. What's his name? Blanking. People are probably gonna shout at me like in the chat in just a minute. But he has like a fundamental series on like ArtStation that you can buy. Daniel Tiger, that's the one. Daniel Tiger does some good tutorials too. So they're not free, but I think they're really good from like the ones. Johnny Nodes on YouTube. That deep note. Okay, that's also good to know. I don't think I've ever watched anything from him, but I want to check out. I think actually Blake yesterday recommended Johnny Nodes as well, I think. I think he does more stylized. Oh, interesting. But yeah, I think talking about the sharpness of, right, is just more noise or more. Again, I feel like we talk about this, especially on this project, right? But like more variation in terms of in this bit. In terms of detail, because sometimes you have, if we zoom in, you kind of have like individual blocks that look quite clean. For example, all these blocks that look quite clean, and then you just have like areas that are just like really noisy. I don't think you need to go as noisy, but just having a difference between the two, where you have like the clean ones and then the noisy ones, that could definitely help. And then with the noisy ones, they're gonna blend in better with like vertic and have like plaster on top of it. Unless what you want to do is set it up in such a way where your plaster is really noisy, and then that is the way that you can. That could also be a good idea too. If you're gonna do it with two textures, I wouldn't do it with like a clean stone and like a noisy stone. I would build that into the base tileable, and then do that noisy texture with like noisy plaster, something like that. I think that's gonna give you enough flexibility. But hey, feel free to experiment and see what you need. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your work. Well, appreciate it. Let's see, was there another question? Doo-doo. I need to learn. I want to learn everything to need to make a game. You ever hear about Bright Memory? It's a solo game. No, I've not heard about it. If you want to learn everything you need to make a game, that's going to take you a while. And I think patience is of the order. Patience, consistency, and motivation definitely going to be key there. Making a game is not easy. If you think about becoming an environment artist, that is like highly specialized, and it's also not going to be easy itself. But if you're thinking about a game, now you're not only talking about like, oh, how do I model stuff? No, how do I design system? How do I design proper gameplay? How do I do the UI? How do I do marketing? How do I set up a business? Kind of stuff comes on top of it. If I would give a recommendation, if you want to get into game creation, look into the easiest ways of getting into it. Game Maker, Roblox, Unreal Engine for Fortnite, or just making stuff in Fortnite yourself, stuff like that. You know, put the barrier of entry really low, and that is gonna teach you a lot of stuff. Because Unreal is really great if you want to make games, but it also requires you to have a lot of experience about a lot of things. Where there's so many restrictions in, let's say, Roblox, that they're put in on purpose so that it's easier for you to develop game. That could be a legitimate thing to try out. Like the Bhutan and photo scan the walls, BRB. Grab me some rock references. Hell yeah. Oh, that would be so sick. There's a part of me that wants to do like a scanning trip. Kind of jealous of what Adam is doing now, you know, just traveling around, scanning a bunch of surfaces and all that kind of stuff. I want to deep dive into that, like at a certain point. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I do want to just go travel, scan a bunch of surfaces, and go wild. A quick one here. This is from Angelo. Angelo didn't really have like any specific question. The only thing that I kind of wanted to add is you have this like cool little spaceship. It would be nice if we occasionally see like occasional lights. Very subtle. That's the only thing. I do like the colors of this song though. Colors looks nice. Yeah, just wanted to quickly throw that in there. It's looking sick. And then my buddy is buying an A7 RV. I'm going to abuse our relationship to scan with it as much as possible. Yeah, I don't even know what that is. So I have no clue what that even is. Thanks for sitting in, Sergio. Have a good evening. Cool. Okay, let's dive into this. Thinking RV is what Walter White used to cook meth. We're really gonna go there? Gonna call me out for looking like Walter White because I'm bald now? Oh, it was so funny in the beginning when I first shaved my head. People were like, "Oh my god, you should cosplay as Walter White now." It's like, shut up. Let's see. Okay, so got a bunch of questions here. I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on the overall look and feel. A lot of questions in here though. First impressions, mood and atmosphere. How does the lighting feel? Too dark, too bright? Are the areas where the lighting could be improved? I created all the objects, ready textures from Megascans. Also have a short intro about the scene on YouTube. Okay, so first of all, this is a lot to take in. Without seeing the intro videos at all, it reads chaotic. So you asked me about like my initial thoughts, right? That's the initial thought that I have is it's like not sure what I'm looking at really. And I say this in a way, let me see. There's a couple of screenshots didn't even have in here. Okay. There's two ways that I find this chaotic. It's like on a macro level, I don't know how the sequence works between all of these ones. All of these like individual screenshots, like I don't know how they tie together. Right? And then the second thing is also visually. Like individually, there's a lot of them happening. They're individually busy. So what I mean by that is that even if you look at a scene like this, there's a lot of just like visual density going on. And then we're being led to a gate, but I don't know what the gate is supposed to be, or like what the composition is leading me to, right? So we have this gate, we have this thing here, cool. But then there's just like a lot of noise happening in the entire scene. It's really difficult to get a good grasp of what we're... And we kind of have that from like all of this, right? Like I think this is a volcano, but it's really hard for me to tell because there's so much stuff like happening in the foreground that just obscures like the stereotypical silhouette of a volcano that you would expect, right? If you were to do like a quick paint here, if we're looking at like a volcano, you would have something where it's like, okay, this is a volcano, right? We have like the summit, we have like the broken top, and then we have like the plume of smoke. What actually makes that look like a volcano is a silhouette. Which is like missing here because, I mean, if we really look closely, kind of see that there's like a silhouette here. But we need to do a better way of like emphasizing that silhouette and making it stand out more. So if the foreground is going to be black, then you kind of want to have something that is going to be lighter in color, and then we break into the clouds. So if we're going to do like a quick interpretation, the areas that I've outlined, we would need something like lighter to add contrast to the scene. Then we have the black mountain, which is cool. I like the visual of it and like the thought of it, like being a black mountain that just spews like plumes of lava and smoke into the air. But we need to accentuate the silhouette of it. And that's gonna immediately help the readability scene already. And that same kind of thought, you can kind of you can extrapolate. Oh my god, I'm tripping over my words. You can then apply that to the rest of your scenes as well. Where if you want something to stand out, you need to have a sort of way to accentuate that or like distance that from the rest of the scene. So the same can be applied here, where you're working with like fog. I would honestly have fog like not completely obscure the background, but make sure that the separation between the fore, middle, and background, there's a clearer separation. There's like much more depth in the scene. And once we start thinking about like the depth, then we're gonna be onto a winner, because a lot of this stuff is like really flat, right? There's almost no depth until you get like so far in the distance that it doesn't really matter that there is depth. Because otherwise it's gonna be really hard to read anything in the scene. Let's have a look at this, right? Like we have, from a high level perspective, we have same amount of visual density. So that means that the shapes, they kind of are harsher. The shape language itself is has very similar shape language. The colors are very similar. There's a lot of contrast happening in the entire scene, and all of those things coming together, they kind of lead towards like this specific picture being very visually overwhelming. So what we need to find is ways to make the scene more readable. I've highlighted a couple of things already. We talked about silhouettes. We talked about depth. And then we talked about detail. Right? So there's so much happening that is like relatively similar that it's becoming hard. Same thing here, right? Like there's just so much detail happening on screen that I don't even know what's happening. And the way that you would fix it like this is, okay, we want detail is usually reserved for the area that you want. So let's say this area is going to be awesome. What we then have to do is we need to contrast that with an area that is going to be less detailed than what we're going to go for. Right? And then we could potentially switch back and be like, okay, all these rocks are going to be spiky and stuff, but you have to be more deliberate with the way that we use. And then lastly, what I'll add here is focus. Where do you want us to look? Like where's the composition, the light? Where's it guiding us? Right? Because otherwise, like, if there's no, like, it's our job as environment art. You kind of take like all the stuff that we've given, right, and like all the tools that we've given, and making like a consistent and readable image. But like Andy, welcome. Thanks for the feedback. That's my work. I totally messed up with the screenshot. Sorry about that. No, I think the screenshots are fine, right? So we have like a lot of screenshots, and there is some sort of a sequence. I do also, there's one piece that is missing. There's the tomb at the end, right? So there is a story going on. But to me, like I really want to hit the nail on the head when it comes to like thinking about the fundamentals of things, right? Because you've done it's a big scene with 2 locations. Yeah. But all of this stuff is not even it's not even relevant to like the scope of the scene. Like even if it was just like a singular image, all of the stuff that I said now can be applied to a singular image. Like the scale of the environment is not even what's being discussed. Yeah. So really driving the point home, just thinking about like all the art fundamentals, how you work with your silhouettes, how you use your colors, how you use contrast in your, how you use depth, how you use your detail, like all those things. You have to be more deliberate to make it in like a more readable image. Because you did mention I created all of the objects myself, only used some ready textures from Megascans. I have a short scene as well. So it's impressive work, and I can tell that you're really passionate about what you do, and you're really focused. You're pumping out a lot of good stuff. It's just sometimes when it comes to a project like this, you get so into the grind set and you're so focused and so tunnel visioned, just like the production of the scene, that you lose track of the bigger picture, that you lose sense of the ability of the scene. So that is something that I really want to drive home with it. Because again, like I do love the atmosphere and the mood and like all the texture work. Even though it is somewhat chaotic, like the assets themselves and like the textures and all that kind of stuff looks really good. So the content is there. We just need to make sure that the content shines properly. Yeah. I do hope that I was helpful. I know that with like art fundamentals, it's usually I try to stay pretty high level. So hopefully the explanation that I gave with like the individual examples is gonna be helpful here. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's just, yeah, to be a little bit more readable. That is even I'll give one example here. I'll do like a little bit of an over. If we go in here, let's say I'm gonna do like a shitty paint over job, but hey, we'll make it work. Mm. What I'm trying to do now, what I'm trying to give you an indication from, is that I really want to soften out like how much contrast is happening in. And then in some areas we can keep it, right? Fine with keeping some of it. Like the majority of the stuff can really just be like really condensed to like a couple of areas. And then where you have the majority of your contrast is where we actually want people to look, right? So what I'm trying to do here is from like a very high level, I'm trying to push your eye from the chaos of looking at this stuff more towards the path. Yep. That's what I'm really trying to do at like a high level. And that comes down to just like, yeah, a bunch of specific asset placement and being very deliberate with how you use the assets. Oh, fuck off. Stop. Because then the readability, if I just turn this on and off again, right? Even from a distance, it's usually more apparent when you look at stuff from a distance. You can see that we turn from the chaos of like, oh my god, this is overwhelming, to like, okay, now we have this like dark path that takes you to like the top of the staircase. And then contrasting that with like the white snow that's kind of like trying to encroach on that path. That's the way that you just like use contrast in terms of like guiding the player, like guiding the viewer in this. And it's rest versus detail, right? It's being very deliberate with those things. You can apply that to like any scene in here, right? For example, all the noise that you have in the snow here, you can really just condense that to like the core path and make sure that that path is like really the thing that shines compared to the rest, and then you're in a good position. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. Very high level. Yeah, I hope that was helpful regardless. Let me do a comparison here. A final note. Thanks for the honest feedback. It's very useful. We'll work on it. Yeah, and thanks also for sharing this, right? I mean, again, it's impressive work, right? The body of work here, that's not really what we talked about. Like, that's impressive. I love the way that you're approaching this. It's very ambitious, and you're shooting for the stars, which is amazing, right? So awesome stuff, Koroliak. Hope that I pronounced that right. Or Andy, I guess. So yeah, awesome stuff for doing this. Very ambitious scene. I love to see it. We just have to massage it to make it a little bit more readable. That make sure that it stands out properly. So awesome stuff. If there's any follow-up questions, feel free to ask them in the community. Happily make some time. Yeah, good stuff. Awesome work. I love the scope and vision of the scene though. Freaking awesome. Right. Random question, but do you think it's a good idea to go to Gamescom but only for about 2 days? Oh yeah, I think Gamescom is perfect for 2 days. So the way that I'm planning Gamescom this year is we are gonna go on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, so on Tuesday I'm gonna go to DevCon. Wednesday I go to Gamescom, but that is a day where only exhibitors and like business people can get in, which is honestly the best day because you get to roam Gamescom without like the massive crowd. Thursday is also a really good day because then the majority of the people have not gone to Gamescom yet. From Friday onwards, Gamescom gets really chaotic. So Friday is still doable. Saturday and Sunday, I would avoid Gamescom completely. Yeah, because Saturday and Sunday is freaking chaos. If you're doing it for the first time, it could be a good experience, but the crowds are so massive. That is it's a little bit overwhelming. Cool. Last one for today. Yeah, the crowds are rough. I mean, yeah, it's like 350,000 people that were there last year. One for today. Alex. Oh, let's see. I've been working on RGB masks for the bookcase. Do you have any advice or feedback on the wood roughness of the wood? And then 2, for the bookcase, any advice on breaking up the straight edges? Make it too worn? Attach some... Okay, cool. Let's have a look at that. And then 3 is any feedback on improving the RGB mask? Okay, so roughness of the wood. That one is pretty good. One that we have on the left. Stuff is pretty shiny on this side. But it is painted, so there's always going to be a bit more shiny. It also depends on what kind of look you want to go for. I don't think... Yeah. I don't think you need to do too much more on the roughness, honestly. Yeah, I think the roughness looks pretty good. I'm more curious to see what the RGB masks are going to... Yeah, I think... Fortunately, this was longer than expected. How it goes. Yeah. Make sure to submit an hour before, and then you're definitely going to be included. So the second thing was for the bookcase. Any advice on breaking up the straight edges? I mean, you're doing something in the texture already, which is pretty good. If you're doing a trim sheet, yeah, honestly, if you're doing a trim sheet, that's the only way that you can do it, right? Like having more normal map breakup. If you have like edges in the normal. Hey, thanks for being here, Connor. Appreciate it as always. Have a good night, man. I think for this style, it's just getting rid of the straight edges in terms of textures. Probably a good bet. If you... I mean, you want to do like very subtle stuff, like just having like a little bend, like in the occasional like flank, that could also be good. Just like bend from like the years of books. But that can be very subtle though. That's the way that I would do it. Having like a very subtle bend. It could be helpful. When it comes to the RGB masks, the first thought that I had on the RGB mask is I would expect some sort of like a more of a gradient here. Because now it's kind of just like pretty generic looking wear. I would expect to see like multiple layers where it's like goes from like the most intense layer to like a more subtle layer. That could potentially be a cool one. Oh, I can finally claim #1. Let's go. Was thinking of maybe taking a night train there and then sleeping one night and a night train back. Oh, okay. So like staying in a hotel somewhere like one night and then going the night train back. I mean, to be fair, if you're... Are you gonna come to the event? Well, I can't remember. Because if you're just coming from Gamescom, you might as well, if this is your first time going, you might as well just go for one day. Because, I mean, you can see a lot in one. I feel like it's doable in one day. What you just have to avoid then, and which honestly I wouldn't really recommend, is that you kind of don't wait to play games. Because those queues are always so long anyway. Like, if you want to play a game, you're going to be waiting for like a couple of hours. Like, easily. For most games. Especially the more popular ones. It's always freaking crazy. Depending on when you go, I think Thursday might be like a chiller day. But let's see. So the RGB masking. So okay, let's have a look. So the one on the left, the R mask, I think we need to get rid of the painter look. So sometimes you have like these very straight edges. I would just like paint in some like little sections where it kind of deviates. Right, because you've already done a good job of like erasing it, but I think adding to it could also be very helpful. Like, it just breaks up any straight lines, which is also going to help with your first concern too. And then number 2 is like you have like a world-based gradient. I think with this one is we can easily extend that way more up. And have it just like way more subtle. And then basically also do the same thing as you do here. Like, add in painted layers on top of it. The way that I'm thinking about this is like we're spending like an entire channel for a mask that only impacts like 10% of the prop, right? So that's why I'm thinking about extending the gradient, and then maybe even just having like, depending on what it's used for, right? Like if you're using it for scuff marks and stuff, I mean, I would have gradient going up and then just have like random scuff mark on like certain areas. And then for this one, this kind of looks like a more stereotypical like AO mask. That's where I would look into, yeah, blending it with more noises and doing like some more variation. Right? Imagine what can be really cool is again thinking about the impact, and especially of books. Right? So having like little insets, like little scuff marks that are directional, to kind of insinuate like the impact of books. Could be really interesting. And that's how I generally would approach this, right? Like just thinking about like the way that it interacts with like its environment and like the books and like people grabbing books from it as well. Thinking about it in that way, where you want to try to make your texture as bespoke as possible, right? Yeah, that's all I had to say about that. I think overall it's looking really good. We're having some like nice reflections, some nice roughness. The RGB mask can definitely be improved, like trying to get more out of them, right? Because yeah, if you really think about it, like an RGB mask is supposed to be the substitute for a unique texture, right? It's just, it's done in a different way, but we're trying to substitute for the lack of a unique texture. Yeah, good stuff, Alec. Oh, Mikval hasn't signed up for the event yet. Haven't decided yet. Oh, well, It's up to you. Well, so the first thing that I'll say is that Gamescom and staying in the city around Gamescom is freaking expensive. So I will not blame you if you can't make it. It's also like the night before like Gamescom starts, right? So we tried to do it in a way where it's like we didn't want to do it on a Thursday because that's when like a lot of stuff happens in the you have like a lot of parties, a lot of people go to different places. So that's why we picked Wednesday, because that felt like was the most appropriate. But yeah, prices around Gamescom are ridiculous around that time. Yeah, we could potentially find. So there was a recommendation from someone from the community act, who said that if you wanted to go to Gamescom but you don't want to pay like ridiculous prices, you can just travel to Düsseldorf, which is like 30-minute train ride or something like that, which like the trains are really affordable, but then you save like 30 to 40% of your hotel. So that's a good suggestion. In Bonn, fairly cheap. I think train connections there are going to be really cheap. So you should be all good. Gamescom opens like relatively late as well. I think they only open at like 10 or 11, so you don't have to rush like in the morning to get in. I can remember correctly. Yeah. Yeah, it would be cool to see ya. Yeah, no pressure though. I know how freaking expensive it is. Oh. I'll have to take a connection. I'll have to take a train to Hamburg and then a connection from there, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, I mean, if you... Yeah, I mean, usually train travel in Germany, you can get like a Germany ticket. Well, I don't know if you can actually. I think you have to be a citizen. But I'm thinking that it's not that. Yeah. Be cool to see ya. Also have to go through Denmark. Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah. We'll see. Let me know. Let me know if you decide to come. We'll make place. Smørrebrød. All right, people. The session has been gone overtime as always, but it was a pleasure hanging out. I loved our communication, like on our chat in the beginning. It's always so fun to hang out, guys. Had a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed this really long session again. And then for the people that have participated, I'm going to share all the images in the community chat as always. I will do that probably in like half an hour, something like that. Yeah, thanks for being here. If you want to become a member, feel free to check out the link below. Share it with your friends, share it with your mom and your dog. You know what to do. Point. Yeah, thanks for being here, Marcos. And thanks to everyone else as well for sharing their work. See you in the next week. Bye-bye.